They called her a monster long before they knew her name. She wandered the dusty streets of a small frontier town in New Mexico, wrapped in rags, hair tangled, face scarred by old burns and newer hatred. People avoided her, whispered curses, and taught their children to throw stones. She had once been called Atsa. She had once belonged to a family, a camp, a riverbank where laughter lived. War, sickness, and forced removal had taken everything. When she returned months later, starving and alone, even her own people were gone. In town, fear turned quickly into cruelty. Shopkeepers chased her away with brooms. Drunks mocked her at night. One afternoon, a boy threw a rock, then another followed. Soon adults joined in, anger finding an easy target in a woman with no protection. She fell to her knees near the saloon, arms raised, blood running down her temple. Someone shouted that she was cursed, that she brought sickness. Another yelled that monsters deserved no mercy. Stones hit her back, her ribs, her head until she stopped trying to stand. That was when the cowboy rode in. His name was Thomas Reed, a cattle hand passing through town for supplies. He saw the crowd before he saw her. When he realized what was happening, he dismounted without thinking. He pushed through the people, his voice sharp and furious. "Enough," he shouted, standing between her and the mob. A stone struck his shoulder. He didn't flinch. He drew his revolver just enough for them to understand he would not move. Silence fell, heavy and ashamed, but no one apologized. Thomas knelt beside her carefully. She trembled, certain this kindness was another trick. He spoke softly, offered water, tore cloth from his shirt to stop the bleeding. When he lifted her, she expected pain, but his arms were steady, respectful. He took her out of town without looking back. Thomas lived alone in a small cabin near the foothills, far from judgment. He cleaned her wounds by lamplight, working slowly, apologizing every time she flinched. He left food nearby and stepped away, letting her decide whether to eat. For days she barely spoke. She watched him like a wounded animal, expecting cruelty. But none came. He slept by. The door gave her his bed and treated her presence as something normal, not a burden. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse. "Why?" she asked. Thomas answered simply, "Because no one should be stoned for existing." Her name, she told him later, was Atsa. She had scars from fire, from shackles, from a life taken apart piece by piece. The town saw a monster. Thomas saw survival written into every line of her body. As her strength returned, she helped without being asked. She swept, cooked, tended the small garden behind the cabin. Thomas never ordered her. He thanked her. That alone felt like a miracle. Word spread, as it always does. Some townsfolk warned Thomas that she was dangerous. Others said he was foolish. He listened and ignored them. When a deputy came asking questions, Thomas stood firm. Atsa began walking without fear again. The hills reminded her of who she once was. She sang softly while working, old songs half remembered. Thomas listened from a distance, never interrupting, knowing some healing happens only in quiet. Months passed. Winter came. The scars faded but never vanished. Neither did the memories. But for the first time, Atsa woke without dread. She was not hidden. She was not hunted. She was home. One day, she returned to town, not alone, but walking beside Thomas. People stared. Some looked away. A few whispered apologies they didn't deserve credit for. Atsa stood tall. She was no monster. She never had been. She never forgot the stones. But she remembered more clearly the man who stepped between her and death. Not as a savior, not as an owner, but as someone who refused to let cruelty be normal. In a country still learning what justice meant, a homeless Apache woman reclaimed her humanity not through revenge, but through survival. And a cowboy learned that courage sometimes looks like standing still and saying no when the world demands violence. That is how monsters are unmade, not by fear, but by choosing to see a person where others see nothing at all.